Okay folks, right, well, welcome to first session of the Introduction to Data Analysis. That's what you come for, is it not? As you know from my talk to subjects in computer science, I'm interested in analytics and governance, and that's kind of why I've, at the very last moment, got given this module to give you some interesting experiences and opportunities to find out about this amazing field called analytics. And you're very lucky that you come here because we've got one of the best products available for actually analysing data, presenting it and visualising it, to find both the interesting questions but also the interesting and valuable answers that we can get out of all of the data that's around us. One of the most interesting things about the field that you're going to be getting experience of over the next 3 academic years that you're with us, both you guys doing BSc IT and those of you who are doing the analytics joint honours, is that it's a very, very rapidly growing field of employment. It's a field where the salary premium for those of you who come out of here with good evidence of analytic skills, you're going to get a salary premium of somewhere around 15–20% compared to the rest of your peers. And this is particularly true with the system we have available, the SAS system, that comes from SAS Inc., a company that was set up in the 80s as a research company creating statistical software, and that I and Dave Voorhis learned to use in the 1980s and 1990s in our business activities before we came here. And in fact, in 1986, 7, 8, I led a small team, a very small team of 3 people, who built what was then the most powerful, most capable project management system in the world at that time. It's in the cutover from the old batch systems of 64,000 activities in a PERT network with resource smoothing and allocation and so on, and the more modern types of systems, and we couldn't find anything that would actually manage 500,000 activities in a project. So we built it using this system called SAS. And we've now got access here to some of the best parts of SAS that you're going to want to learn, that you will be able to get really great placements when you apply for your job, your placement job, around about this time next year. So we're giving you something that's going to help you to become really, really employable, and it's going to help you to get really great jobs in a year and a half's time. Now, the module Introduction to Data Analysis, Data Analytics, this field that's growing, so that in 2017 it's predicted in the UK alone there will be 36,000 new jobs requiring analytics skills. And by 2020, around about 56,000 new jobs a year. In 2020, the predictions by Tech Partners, otherwise it used to be known as eSkills UK, they're predicting over 500,000 jobs will involve some aspect of data science and analytics. So there's huge opportunities for you guys as you go through, and each year you will be introduced to new areas of SAS, new ways of using SAS, new ways of understanding what this field of analytics is all about. So there's me, Richard Self, leading the module, and Ian Dent here, who has a long time industrial background in data management and databases with organisations like Hewlett-Packard, did you say, and Compaq and so on. We've both got a lot of industrial business experience, so we can help bring to life the sorts of questions that you're going to be exploring over the next 12 weeks. We're going to give you access, or let you find all sorts of interesting sources of data, and you'll choose one of them for each of you or each of your pairs, and you will develop an interesting little system to analyse some data and come up with some great ideas. You've got access, I guess, by now to this module on Blackboard, have you all? Every one of you? Have you had a look at it yet? Pardon? No? Right, well I would encourage you as soon as possible to have a sort of explore. In the info contacts, very shortly there'll be information about me and about Ian. Ian is going to be looking after you and supporting you in the workshops in the labs in B202, I think is on Friday, by and large. And I will be running the Tuesday session. And what I want to do is to take you through what we've got here, and I'll switch off the editing so it looks roughly the same as you will see it. Not quite, but not far off. Announcements is going to be where I and Ian will sort of send out information to you that's interesting and it's current, it's new stuff we've just tripped over in our regular reviews of all the stuff that pours into us about analytics, about governance, about job opportunities that may be interesting, or examples of it, problems with analytics, the governance side, things where things are going wrong because people are doing silly things, perhaps. And try to help you to understand, how this field is growing astonishingly rapidly. In the module info section, obvious little bit about, oh, gracious, oh that's clever, wow. Yeah, well, maybe if I stood over this side, then I could control it off here. What was it? This was announcements, wasn't it? Module info, yeah, right. Let's go through some of these things so that you understand what it is and how we're going to work. Because what you're going to do in this module is completely different, probably from anything you've done before, or that you might like to do in the future. Well, no, not necessarily, because we try to... Okay, so, not active there. I wonder how we get that to go active. It doesn't work like that. Oh well, let's try it in here in case it's active. No, that's not active, that's not active. Why is that not active? Okay, so, sorry, I'm just learning to use this. This is new stuff that we had delivered to us over the summer, and I've not taught in one of these magical environments before. So, hey, we're going to learn how to use some of this. We're going to do an awful lot of different things. Let me ask you a question about what you expect from me and from Ian. Do you expect answers? Or do you expect questions? I think I asked this question last term in Intro to Computer Science, but there's a couple of you who didn't do that module. So, am I here to give you answers or questions?
Both.
Why do you think both?
I don't know, sometimes you can answer a question with another question which can, lead to more answers.
Yeah. I mean, by and large, yeah, I take your point. There are occasions when we will give you some answers, but by and large we're here to try and pose the sort of questions, to teach you how to find the sort of questions. We'll use our experience from my experience in the last 10 years, 15 years here in university, and before that in Rolls-Royce Aerospace. And Ian with his industrial experience, to help you find and to prime you with some of the really fascinating questions that will then you will be able to remember, you will develop into your own framework of questions that will stay with you for life, and then you'll be able to always find a good answer. Not necessarily the very, very best, because often business doesn't want the very, very best, because that might take far too long to happen. But a good answer, and there may be lots of different good answers. And that's what we're really looking for in the assessments here, certainly in this module and any of the modules I teach. I'm not looking for the gold-plated answer. I want a good answer that you can properly justify, that you can give the reasons why that is a credible, useful, valuable answer. So we're looking more for explanations, justification, than the answer itself. And you'll find, as we go through, that the various different parts of the assessment, some of it's just going to be demonstration. This is a great demonstration. It worked because. We're looking at the because. And as you move from the first year to the second year to the third year, more and more emphasis becomes placed on that because part of your answer. We're not looking for regurgitation of facts by and large, generally. However, there are one or two exceptions. We'll come on to that as we look at what the whole process of this module is about. Study area. Well, let's just have a look at here. There's there's 3 sections here. Well, 4 sections really. Yeah, those 3 I'm interested in. Study area, study materials, and SAS materials. And a lot of the week-by-week stuff that relates to what we do today and on Friday, you will find in a kind of a discussion group environment in the study area. Interesting. And this is what it looks like, and we're actually working inside here in a little bit. There's also this section there, where I will be posting some of the more formal stuff week by week. Some of the things I want to do, because I don't want to put it into a discussion board, because I want to put it in here. It's easier for me, it's easier for you to some extent. And then in here is the entire materials that SAS have given us, that Ian went through in 5 days, was it? Yeah, full 5-day course over at the Birmingham City University, where the SAS Academic Alliance initiative is run by Kathy Maitland, who's the director of the SAS Student Academy. And she runs training courses for academics. She's teaching the teachers how to use SAS and various other bits and pieces. And sometimes we go off down to the SAS headquarters down in Marlow, down near the Thames, and their headquarters is magic. Beautiful building, very, very fine facilities, and very, very good training facilities. However, in here you have a load of material titled Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3, Chapter 4, etc. down to Chapter 20. Now those are the formal SAS training materials that will help you to understand all about how SAS works, why it works the way it does, and you will become proficient at using SAS. And here are the individual things that you switch into. In here, we have something like 120 of the primary SAS manuals about this release of SAS called SAS 9.3. The base SAS, this is the very basic part of SAS. So we've just put a few here. You can actually get all of the manuals in the S drive, the common area. In fact, when you log into the specialist computing labs, where you'll be on Friday, and you've been before, if you look on the S drive, you'll find in the common area a whole folder called SAS. And in it, you will find a set of all 120 manuals that we've got for you. You've also got, in a big fat zip file here, 3/4 of a, what's that? Yeah, about 3/4 of a gig, 757 megabytes worth of zip file, with all of the materials, all of the source code, all of the SAS formatted data that you will use in terms of doing that. You can actually download all of that lot from the S drive. It's probably easier to do that from there than from here. And then we can collect together in here a whole range of interesting stuff as we develop our ideas. This is what Richard Hill put together last year with the module when he was running it, and I and Ian will add to it with interesting and useful resources which will help you to develop your ideas. We'll probably put up some links to sources of big data and as we go through, and we'll, we can build it together. If you come up with some good ideas, good resources, good sources, you can put them into the discussion board in the study area, or you can email them to me or to Ian, and we'll post them in here. So there's lots of ways we can share all of our developing knowledge. So that's what we've got in those three areas. In the fullness of time, the assessments section will get populated with exactly what you're going to be doing for the next 12 weeks in terms of your assessed activities. And if we just look in there, I think it's in here, I'm not sure. We do have the basic brief, which will probably stay pretty much the same, because I see no real reason to change it. And so you'll be able to find out from here exactly what you're going to be doing, which is a whole set of work, some of which are tests which are related to your understanding of SAS based on the various chapters. And if we look in, well, you actually access it through there. I think it was. Not wrong bit. Might be in there if you're lucky. I've definitely seen it recently. Not there. But you'll see, oh, by the way, you'll see here how within the study area we have tutorials, work, and we have study lecture slides, which is the stuff we'll talk about in my session. Tutorial work, Ian will be looking after you on Fridays. So just explore what we've got here. Online test, that's what I was looking for. And here is what's going to happen in about 2 or 3 weeks' time when you've covered chapters 1 to 5. You can go to there and do the test, and you'll be able to do it as many times as you like. Within a time frame. And we will then record through Blackboard your best score. And that will, each of those tests will contribute about 10% to your overall grade for the module. And there's other bits as well that give you the other, what's it, 60%. Let's go back there. One of the things you're going... Oh, now how do we do this one? Go up like that. Yep. Okay. So, a bit of advice about how to study, how to do well. Things that you need to be thinking about are, because it's all to do with you doing the learning. I can't learn for you, Ian can't learn for you. You are the only person who can learn for yourself. So you need to think about some of these questions and some of these bits of guidelines. You've got to think about what do you need to know. You've got to look at the module spec, which was a previous little entry on here. You've got to think a little bit about how much time you need to allocate to this module, and ultimately the same question to your other module. But you do need to be realistic and you need to be prepared. But you need to think about when you're struggling. How many questions, or when do you need to ask questions of me and of Ian to help to get you help. A lot of what we're going to be doing with you is this, the formative stuff, helping you to find out what you know and then coming to us for advice, if necessary, if you can't work out the answer yourself. But ideally, we will give you indications of where you can do better and how you can do better. And they have a different term called summative assessment, and that's where you're going to get grades and marks for it. One of the things about this sort of formative feedback that many of you found, I think, last term, was that by engaging in those workshops with me in the first 6 weeks, you were able to identify things that you hadn't thought about that were actually quite useful, that helped many of you to get really pretty impressively good grades and marks for your articles. Those of you who didn't engage in this feedback for getting ideas for how to improve tended not to get very good grades for the articles. It was quite noticeable. And there's a very, very high correlation between students who get great marks and great assessments and their engagement in the whole teaching and learning experience, both the lectures and those tutorials. And by the way, we will be taking attendance records every session, and you are expected to have as close to 100% attendance. So Fridays are not optional. The university rules are very, very clear. If you miss 3 in a series, then you will get reported to the sort of student support group, and they will come and chase you, because we can deregister you for failure to attend the 3 in a row. So it's in your interests to use as all the time you have, both here on a Tuesday and in 202 on a Friday, because you're going to need that. Yeah, much better marks. Just a reminder, this is our modules are 20 credit modules. That means they're equivalent to 200 hours worth of your time, spread over 12 weeks of teaching plus a couple of weeks of Easter. You'll be with us for 4 hours a week, 2 in these tutorial in these lectures, seminars, and 2 hours a week in the workshop and in the labs. But then you'll spend at least 13 hours a week on each module in your own study. You're treating this as a full-time, the university here as a full-time job. Sorry. Where's it gone to? Oh, there we are. Yeah. And we'll point out all the things that you're going to need to do week by week. And as many of you found out last term, with maybe not you guys, but others of your colleagues found, if you're not careful, if you don't keep up the week by week, day by day activity, you will get behind pretty quickly. It then becomes an enormous mountain to climb to actually to get the job done in time for your final assessment. And basically, we're going to be helping you with that, because we're going to schedule through the term the various points when you have to have done various things. And the nice thing for you is, and us, is that by the end of week 12, which is just after the 2 weeks after Easter, everything will have been completed. So before you go home, 2 weeks after the end of after Easter, you will know your grade for this module. There won't be any waiting for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks for your assignments to be marked and communicated back to you. So you will know by the end of the semester exactly what you've achieved. So, how many of you got pen and paper? many pens have you each got? Anybody got more than one pen? Oh, you're not millennials people then, you are baby boomers, luckily. That came out of a SAS Global Forum conference, special session back in March last year, where they were doing some work helping us as academics and people in employment or employers understand the nature of the I generation or the Generation Z. And it turned out that most Generation Z, Generation I, who are sort of in there under 20 now, often don't even have a pen. But those who came from my generation, the baby boomer generation, typically would have at least 2 pens or something with us. Just how things have changed.
Yeah, I have all 2 pens.
You don't look it, you look beautifully young. Because we are not in the labs. Now, I don't actually, to be realistic, I don't actually mind whether you're going to do most of your note-taking on paper or electronically, although it's interesting, some research came out last year, towards or middle of last year, that identified the fact that if people take notes, essentially pen and paper, writing in longhand, they retained and developed and retained a much better understanding of the concepts that they listened to in the lecture than if they did it on the keyboard. If they did it on the keyboard, they remembered the facts more accurately, but didn't develop an understanding of the concepts as well. Interesting to find out ultimately why. But however you do it, do make note. If there's any material that we say you really ought to do, read some notes, read some papers or something like that, find out information for next week, then you will find it much more effective if you've done that work, the pre-reading or the pre-thinking. And yes, keep your work backed up. Now, I think several of your group, 170 odd, who started this year in computing, had 1 or 2, shall we call them system failures, during the latter end of last term. A memory stick got scrambled or lost, or a PC or a laptop got virused or something like that. So make sure that every time you started developing some work, whether it's some of your software in SAS, whether it's the writing, your notes you're making, or reports you're writing, whether in this module or in many other modules, get copies out there, whether it's Google Docs or whether it's Dropbox or whatever. Get backups. But when you come to demonstrate your little SAS system, it's not going to work very well if you come along and say, Ian, Richard, I had a fantastic demo available, only the file structure got scrambled or something. Well, you get 0 for that, guys. So, develop the habit of backing the work up. It's really, really important. Exercises. As you do work your way through, particularly the SAS course material, do them several times so you actually really begin to understand them and can actually not just get the answer quickly, but think about why did that bit of SAS code work the way it did? What am I learning about how it works? What have I learned in terms of analysing that set of data? Wait. Oh. How's it done that? Give up.
You stood too close to it, didn't you?
I stood too close to it now. What control? Oh, look, it's one of them. Do your own work. Lead on from where you are to somewhere more interesting. Discuss. Talk to each other. There's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 people here. That's students out of 7, not bad. That means there's 16 brains working together. And 16 brains is far more powerful than one brain by itself. If you're doing research, 16 people doing research and then sharing the benefits of that, you will all grow much more rapidly. You will grow your experience, your understanding much, much more quickly than if you struggle to keep it all just by yourself. So talk to each other. Us talking from our great height of experience as lecturers and clapped out old, well, at least me, adults. Grumpy advice. It doesn't actually work if you work all night. Look after yourselves. Look after your health. It's your responsibility to look after your health, because if your health goes downwards, your studying is going to go down. So look after yourselves. And just because mum or dad's not around to tell you to go to bed at midnight or 1 o'clock, which might have happened in the past, still think about that, because you need to get a good amount of sleep. Now, I remember back when I was in your position, yeah, I worked through 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock. It didn't actually help very much. Yeah, I'm sure I used to do till next week as well, that one. But tomorrow comes really rather quickly. Next week and next month comes horribly fast. Hey, I never believed when I was your age that I would see 2015. It was so far into the distance, it just didn't exist. It's here now. I've got books at home because I tend to write the date when I buy a book, whether it's a novel or anything else, in the top right-hand corner of the front page. I've got books 1971 in my library still at home, when I was in your position. First year undergraduate. Yeah, like I said last term, look at those assessment criteria because they will help you do better. They're not just there as a magical incantation that turns your piece of work into a mark when I or ear see it. The purpose of publishing the criteria for you, whether 95% band, the 85% and so on like you saw with ICS, is so you can use those criteria to judge your own work and to improve your work before you actually get around to submitting it. As long as you do not use somebody else's work and pass that off as your own, which is plagiarism, and we will come down like a ton of bricks on you if we can see the sharing. But there's nothing in the rules that says you can't do that. Peer review. You see, if you think about when you go out to employment and you start working in your placement job, say in a couple of years' time, or when you go out into the big wide world after you've graduated, you will almost inevitably be working in teams. And teams want to do really, really well. And each person wants to do really, really well. But we're all different. We all have different skills, different capabilities, different background. And those different backgrounds and perspectives and understanding and skills can work together. So do check your work, get someone else to check it, check somebody else's work. Work together as teams. Learn how to work together, learn how to help each other improve. One of my graduates from last year sent me an email just a couple of days ago to say he was very pleased that in his second year module, IT Services Management, he'd learnt about something called the Zachman Framework. You'll find out about that next year. Because in his master's programme that he's studying down in Canterbury, Kent University, one of the sessions turned up with this thing called the Zachman Enterprise Architecture Framework. And he was able to then share his knowledge and teach his class. He was helping, he was using his background that no one else in that group had got. So, use each other to help develop. There's nothing in the rules that says you can't do that, and we actively want you to help each other. Peer review, well, basically working together to do better. And the sky really has to fall in for you to get extensions. If you are beginning to have problems for whatever reason, speak to your personal tutor, speak to your lecturer tutor, that's us too. If you've only got a problem in this module, come and talk to us. If you've got a problem that's getting out of hand in your broader life that's affecting other modules, go talk to Dave Voorhis. He's the program leader for BSCIT. If you are on the joint honours, well, you've probably already been allocated a personal tutor who will be able to help you sort those sort of things out. Complete the assessments on time and manage your own activities yourself. We can't manage your activities for yourself. Why is it doing this? Yeah. Oops, not there. Right. A couple of things I want to talk about here in study materials. Don't want you to do it just now, but I want you to do it before next week. I want you to go to that URL, which looks like this. This is a report and access to a range of interesting stuff from SAS themselves, SAS UK. And back in June last year, they had a big conference down in Marlow. A lot of practitioners, people who do analytics with SAS for real. And they launched an interesting survey to find out what sort of personal characteristics make a good data scientist in a whole range of areas. They came up with, I think, 15 or 16 different aspects. There's a summary here. There's an infographic there about what makes great data scientists, and a rather more unhappy one about growing levels of stress. Have a look at these. There's another one I want to give you, which I'll add to in a little while. It's 10 different profiles. Different sorts of people, and what they do is the DISC profile, and you can do this as a analytics student, and you go to here. It's a what they call a psychometric tool or personality profile, which gives you, I think, 20 forget how many questions there are. There's quite a large number. 24 is it? Yeah. Does it say so somewhere?
Yeah.
Ah, yeah. And when you finished it, you'll give some details about, you'll give some details about yourself, and then they will email back to you within 72 hours or so. interpretation of the answers you've given. Now they're going to be very interesting to help you understand the sorts of roles that you might like to develop yourself into the future. Whether you want to be the hardcore coding who does the extract, transform and load at the very beginning of the data analysis process, or whether you're more interested in some of the softer skill side of looking at the analysis, providing the communication of the answers, the visualization and then the answers. It'll help you to get a handle on who you are and what sort of roles you might like to develop towards in the future. And it's a bit like the Sophia framework I showed you, I think I showed you last week or so of ICS. They're not tests that are right or wrong, or that profiling, the male-female profile that we did about week 10 or 11. They are there to help you understand yourself so you can make informed, sensible judgments about where your career might go in the future. So here's the sort of basic information that goes at the front and allows, I think, where is it? There should be an email, there we are, an email address so they can send you it. It's about a 4-page that they send back, and it's actually quite interestingly accurate. The 1 or 2 people who I've shown mine to said, wow, that is you down to perfection. And it's a very subtle and it's a very clever test. It will tell you a bit about yourself. Mine is an interesting one. If we go back, I'm not going to show you what mine itself, but mine is a variant on that one. It's not far of it. Mine actually on the compliance drops a bit further down here. And so you can find out whether you want to crunch numbers or whether you're the sort of person who's driven to achieve, to deliver results, and so on. And you can find out about each of these sorts. Here is the classic geek, that one there. The one person who doesn't actually care 2 hoots about influencing and communication and dominating people, but is very, very strong on the S and the C sides. And C is compliance. I follow the rules perfectly there, pretty much. So you get an insight, a really interesting insight into yourself that will help you to understand the types of roles that might work for you in the future. So I want you to do that for next week and then bring it with you. We're not going to share the actual shape or the precise wording, but I'd like you to sort of have a think about which of these 10 on here are you, and what does that mean for the future, for you, for the career opportunities that you might want to do. You'll need to do some research as well, so you'll need also to look at these surveys, these reports here. And then you'll understand a little bit more about how you can relate to SAS and analytics in general. Now, we have in the labs, we have the SAS system as a desktop environment, which you'll be using on Friday. But you can also install it into your own PC as long as you've got a 64-bit PC running Windows 7 or Windows 8. The link is there, and you are advised to use the Oracle the Oracle VM package, Oracle VirtualBox. It works better than the VMware solution. It seems to be easier to control and manage by and large in a Windows environment. There are options there also for those of you who've got Apples, Mac OS or whatever, OS X. here's the guidelines, and you can get OS X or Linux versions as well. Now, it is critical that you get this quick start guide, the PDF, and use that and read it, and perhaps even watch the video before you try and install it. You will need almost certainly to climb through your BIOS to switch on virtualization so that it can run these virtual machines. But more importantly, there are 3 or 4 steps to go through to install Oracle VirtualBox and then download and install the SAS Analytics U environment so that you can connect them up and then connect to the outside. And there are 1 or 2 absolutely critical instructions that the PDF talks about setting up a file structure with a very precise name that you must not change if you're going to get communication in and out of VirtualBox to your SAS virtual machine. Then you can download the SAS University Edition, SAS Analytics U. And here are the download buttons that will deliver what you need. Follow the instructions absolutely perfectly. And this is one of those occasions where the instructions should be read beforehand rather than after the event when all else fails, read the instructions. That doesn't work here. So might as well save time, read the instructions first, because if you get it wrong, it doesn't work. So, now the advantage of you using this, and you can do this actually also on the PCs in the labs. You can there are some instructions I give here. Wrong place. Yeah, here. You can actually configure and run SAS Analytics U, this download virtual machine, following that block as well. We have the VirtualBox there as well. Now, the advantage, however, of using this on your own machine is that SAS Studio, which is what runs this environment, this virtual engine, virtual machine, I am told will become the SME offering of SAS in the future. So you having experience of installing it yourself will actually be kind of valuable as you move out into the business world. Because there will become a lot of people in SMEs, the small and medium-sized companies, who are going to be using SAS Studio, this one, rather than the desktop environment, because that's really quite expensive. And for SMEs, this environment is going to be absolutely stunning for them. Really, really good, and almost certainly will become priced at a sensible price that SMEs can afford. Whereas the sort of environment that we've got, and we're developing, the full product set for a reasonable sized organisation of SAS is about £1.5 million licence fee a year. So I can imagine the price for SAS Studio is going to be an awful lot lower for small businesses. So most of you are going to work in small businesses when you graduate, probably. So that's where half of all employment is. And if you have analytics experience, you can do some of these jobs. That's going to be something really great for you, help you with your jobs. So use both, get used to the SAS 9.3 on the desktop in the labs, and Analytics U, or the SAS student one, on your own personal laptops. They work for the sort of stuff we're wanting you to do. They work exactly the same. If you really want to have the desktop version, yeah, you can make an appointment with Phil Lawson, and he can install it for you. It'll take him about an hour to do it while you go off and do something else, because it installs something of the order of about 11 gigabytes worth of software. It's a big installation if you have the desktop version. So, task 1, get yourself that analytics profile. It'll tell you something useful. It'll help develop you, carrying on from where we left off in ICS. I want to just cover a few little ground rules. That's me. We want to find out why analytics, A, is exciting and interesting, and then how to build something useful, and then to communicate it. So what we have here is the sort of things we're going to be looking at, whether it's predicting from spending patterns what's going on in people's personal lives, might be a bit unethical. We're going to be looking at some of the areas of the world of big data and Internet of Things. Probably more the big data, the publicly available data that's easy to find, easy to hoover up, download, pour into SAS. We'll think about looking at some of the basic statistical techniques, not the really complicated ones because you don't actually need them. But we do need to have some idea of some of the statistics. The most important part, in a sense, is learning SAS so that you can do some of that stuff, because SAS is an industrial weight analytical system. Yeah, you can get lots and lots and lots of web-based visualization tools, but we'd like you to use these ones particularly. And one of the things that businesses are saying is really critical in the field of analytics and data science is communication. Now, I was out, as you probably remember, I was out at a conference, co-chairing an educational conference in big data analytics in Las Vegas in October last year. And one of the things we were discussing or debating in terms of curricula for programs like this is what are the various skill sets that people need out there. And one of the things that came really, really strongly through all of the discussions was the point about communication. The soft skill of communication is that, if you remember last term when we did that intro to computer science on analytics, if you can't remember, go find it in the playlist for the ICS series of lectures. Find mine, have another look at it, and look at the 3 or 4 infographics I put in there that show the job opportunities, the salary increases, but also the 2 brains that are side by side identifying the technical skills, the hard computer science type skills, and then the softer communication skills, problem analysis, problem understanding, critical thinking, and communication storytelling. And I'd like you all ultimately to be able to develop your storytelling capabilities so that you can persuade Ian and me as we assess your work that you've chosen a great set of data, you've identified a really interesting problem, you've analysed it using those tools, and then you've got this fantastic answer that really means something important. Now, one of the interesting things we'll do is that as part of the SAS academic program that we're part of, you can actually take, based on that 20-chapter work that you've got to learn base SAS, there is an exam which will give you a base SAS certification that proves to the world that you're ace at using the base SAS facilities. And we will, if you take the exam, when you feel you're up to it, and we've got 1 or 2 copies of the base SAS certification manual, we will actually pay you to take the test so you've actually got that base SAS certificate that will prove to future employers that you know how to do SAS. And over the next couple of years, we'll also work on another part of the SAS program which will give you certificates for some of the modules you're going to be completing over the next 3 years that are related to using SAS. Most of your work is going to be inquiry based, so we're going to pose you problems, you're going to pose yourselves problems and questions, and that's how we're going to do. It's not going to be another set of every week 2 hours of yourself boring you to death. Now, I'd like a little debate. What sort of things about you guys, the way you work, the way I work, the way that Ian works, might spoil this module for you? Bear in mind, you are going to be doing almost all of the work. What are things that you're going to need from each other that if it doesn't happen is going to make it difficult to achieve a good outcome?
Being put in groups and people not necessarily know it.
People not pulling their work in groups. So does that mean you want to, if we say we want you in pairs, that you want to work in pairs, we create the groups, or do you want to create the groups? You'd like to create the groups. Does everybody agree with that? Does it make sense? Now, if we do that, let you choose your pairs, or whatever it is we end up with. What happens if that pairing doesn't work very well?
We had IT design studio last semester. We had it was like a percentage form. So if you agreed that one person did more work than the other, and it's clear, they would get 70% of the credit for the piece of work that they submitted. That's a good idea. At the same time, it's bad in the way that if the person doesn't agree with the fact they haven't done, the other person's done more work, and then it could get quite.
I would find it very unlikely that anyone would sign off on anything.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so that might be a little bit of a problem then. Okay, we'll bear that in mind. Anything else about running an inquiry-based, you doing most of the work, us guiding you? Anything else that would be a problem, potentially?
If you don't bring the results that you've been looking and researching to the lessons, you can't expand on it, discussion.
So you kind of feel that if colleagues here haven't done the pre-reading and to contribute, that's a problem, potentially. Well, interesting perspective which I've had over the last, well, no, most of the time I've been teaching here is, one of the things is we don't like people thieving things, do we? You know, we're really tetchy about people who nick our electronics. And that's theft. Now, if some people freeload, they don't contribute, they don't do the work beforehand, you are effectively stealing from those of you who do the work. You're stealing their ideas, but you're also stealing their time in a sense. So, now, everybody needs to contribute. So one of the biggest things that's going to spoil the module is going to be if people don't actually do the work beforehand and don't contribute and don't help work with each other in their pairs. So those are really, I think, going to be some of the most important things that you're going to have to think about. Anything else that you might find will spoil the module in a small group like this?
People talking.
Interestingly, no one has been talking today. Or have you noticed that's something I haven't?
They were literally talking as I said it.
Okay, right, well, sorry, yeah. I think in terms of discussions, then we need to think about listening to other people while they're talking, and if we have something interesting to say that we think is interesting, and hopefully the rest of us will think it interesting, wait your turn. So taking turns and waiting for the opportunity. Trying not to be distracting. The assessment is a portfolio. We just basically add up all of the results. So these are the 4 tests here. Freeze the picture. Yes. Yeah. For example, technical competence. Those are the 4 tests about those various chapters of the SAS programming course. So they will show that you are competent to use SAS. They are based, I think, around some of the base SAS certificate questions. So that, eventually when you find out what the results there are for you, then that will give you some confidence that you are able to go ahead and do the SAS-based certificate if you want to. A bit of communication, that's the final presentation that you'll be giving, back end of this term. And then your little SAS product to do some analysis of some fairly significant data that you're going to choose, you're going to find, you're going to choose, you're going to manipulate, analyse, and come up with a really interesting story, which is this presentation, the communication. So you're going to be covering pretty much everything you need to do to prove that you are worthy at this stage, at this level, of being an analyst, calling yourselves sort of a data analyst, a beginner data scientist almost. Because you can do the SAS, you can communicate, and you can do the analytics side as well. So all three components in that sense, and they all add together. So, I think, let me just check whether this is the last one. I think it was the last one, yes it is. What I want you to do, those of you who have actually got connection to the internet, go to this page and have a look at those two areas. Now, IT Jobs Watch, you can look for analytics jobs, you can look for SAS, you can look for SPSS, you can look for Cognos, you can look for R, capital R, which is a programming language, analytics programming language. You can look for jobs with those various things. And then this is Sophia. If you remember last term, just before Christmas, I talked a little bit about Sophia, didn't I? I think I did. Yeah. And that again looks at, and there's some other links I shall put up there shortly, so you can find out a bit more about what's going on as Sophia change from Sophia 5 framework to Sophia 6, and how they bring in analytics and so on. So, right, go find IT Jobs Watch and see what sort of jobs there are out there, and the sort of salaries compared to some of the other jobs that are available for computer scientists.